Come, come, whoever you are, wonder worshiper, a lover of the living, as is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Good morning. My name is Stacy Salisbury, and I'm the clerk of the Board of Trustees, and I'm on the Spiritual Practices team. And I'm training Sibu here on how to do this as well.
Good morning. My name is Sibu Siso, and I'm a member of the Finance Committee, and I'm also the new treasurer. So, right. So, welcome to our service. Unitarian Universalism encourages an open-ended search for meaning in life and a commitment to asking our values to shape our actions. We are a pluralistic religion that draws wisdom from many resources. We welcome all people into our beloved community of whatever age, race, class, ethnicity, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religious backgrounds.
We especially welcome those of you who may be worshiping with us for the first time. We invite you to join us after service in the back corner here for coffee hour. Because downstairs we're still set up for the second hand sale, which is going fabulous. Lucia, how much so far? No, don't say it. Okay. Well, apparently we're keeping it on the DL right now, but guess what? There is stuff still downstairs. Are you doing a yeah? I think it's kind of cool. Woohoo! So you remember last week when you brought all your old junk here for us to sell. Go downstairs, take someone else's old junk home to your place, and we'll make a little more cash. So this is fabulous. Thanks to everyone. Also, we have the Community Growth Challenge that's going on right now. We're above 7,000 on that. We're trying to shoot for $10,000 by the end of August. You got an extra fiver, you got an extra 500. Whatever you got, put it in an envelope, write community growth on it so we get it to the right place. That's being matched by an anonymous and generous donor to this congregation. So we've got that going till August 31st. Let's make that happen. Please check our calendar and newsletter for announcements of programs and events. Guests are welcome to participate in any activities in this community. If you'd like more information about the congregation or if you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask any board member. Thank you very much. Now, Darcy's going to come up and introduce another new guy we got in this place. They didn't give me a schedule.
We have a phantom spotlight from Steve Pickerel up in the loft. He's looking for help. You're on, Steve.
Hello. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, great. So this is the AV booth. This is where I sit pretty much every other Sunday on average. We have Therese Geis that helps us up here as well, and Eric Adamek that'll also help out on occasion. But we are looking for some help because I am not here every week, and nor is she. So I hope the viewers at home can see me fine up here. But so I have some notes here. Yes. So what we're looking for help for is to run this on Sundays. Making the YouTube live stream it's fairly easy, but it does require somebody to be here. So we are looking for somebody to pass on this wealth of knowledge for that. You get to control the camera, like I just did. Pretty fun event there. We also are looking for some help. If you don't like the camera and all the YouTube stuff and everything, we're also looking for help with PowerPoint presentations. Again, we have a template already set up for that, so sometimes it does change depending on the service and depending on the person, so we can edit that and everything. Also, we have meetings after services sometimes, so we're looking for somebody to help out with a Zoom meeting and know how to do that and everything. So again, we can set up a time because I don't just do this on the fly. I have a fairly busy schedule myself, so setting up a time is always the best. It can be during the week after work or so, but we can pass that knowledge on as well. I hope I'm not being too loud on the mics because that's another thing we have to adjust and everything on here as well with this software that you see up on the screen right now. Like every now and then when you hear somebody being too loud, you might hear on YouTube, it's a little in this red area here, so you might hear it fluctuate a little bit. So that's me changing that up here.
So, Steve, people should be in touch with you if they have any interest in this, right?
Yes. So I am. One other thing I'd really like to see is some help on Realm. I don't worked so much on Realm, but my contact information is there. And if you do want my contact information, I can easily get that to you as well. Or my wife, she does the PowerPoint, Erica. She's been working on PowerPoint as well quite a bit there. I didn't want to not give credit to her, of course. So I'm just mainly looking for a team of just a few people. I know I've gotten a couple of people already asked to help, but it's not a huge commitment, but it is still a commitment. You know, if you say you're going to sign up for a Sunday, you still got to be here. And yeah, that is really all I have for the AV Spotlight. Unless,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you and Erica for all that you do to make this happen electronically. Now it's time for Darcy to come.
Introducing Reverend Patrick Price, our new interim minister. He was raised a bit of information. He was raised on the west side of Fort Worth, Texas, where he has a large extended family. He was raised in the Disciples of Christ Church. His parents are originally from Marshalltown, Iowa. He earned his BA in political science from the University of Missouri-Columbia. He enlisted in the Air Force, where he was trained and served as an orthotic brace specialist. After his tour, he transferred to Meadville Lombard Seminary in Chicago and graduated from there in 1995 with a Master of Divinity and was ordained the same year. He served as a settled minister to the UU Fellowship of Columbia, South Carolina, for 9 years. He worked on many social, political, and equality issues while serving there. He served as a commuting interim minister at the UU Church in Waukesha, Wisconsin. He was then called to serve the UU Church of Plano, Texas, where he was for 12 years. He was active in interfaith, equality, and education issues. Patrick and his wife, Jennifer Innes, who is a reverend as well, served as co-interim ministers to the First Unitarian Church of Geneva, Illinois, and he in turn took a second interim in 2019 at the First Unitarian Church of Hobart, Indiana, which was a 4-hour commute for him. An hour and a half. In 2020, he followed his wife to Peoria, where she is currently serving as the called minister to the UU Church of Peoria. Reverend Price has been married to Reverend Jennifer Ennis for 19 years. They have 2 children, Nate, age 14, and Abby, 10. He and his wife share an interest in science fiction, historical literature, and movies. Reverend Patrick will be serving here for 1 year as our 3/4-time interim minister. Please welcome Reverend Patrick Price.
And I want to say thank you to Darcy and all of the folks on the search team and the leadership. They have been amazing. We'll talk more later. But now, let us light our chalice. In unison, let us say together, in the light of truth, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to inspire. I invite you now to join in our opening song, number 361, and to rejoice and come in, and I mean really rejoice with this one. It's in your hymnal and on the screen. Rise as you're willing and able, and body your spirit.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
morning, friends. I need that song on my alarm clock, I think. If any of the kids want to come up, you are welcome to come up this week. Last week, we couldn't because it was all crowded. Do my friends want to come up here? You're leaving me hanging. Good morning. There you are. Hi, I'm happy to see your faces. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my week. So our air conditioner went out in our house, and then the power went out on our second floor mysteriously, and our dishwasher is broken. So I'm having bad luck, I think. But anyway, also I didn't sleep very well last night. And when I woke up this morning, I was running late. So I got here and my hair was still wet. And I'm pretty sure I'm wearing the same outfit I wore last Sunday and maybe the Sunday before that, right? But then I thought of all of you here. And even though I'm super discombobulated, do you know what discombobulated means? I love that word. Yeah. It means I am just all over the place. I'm like a bunch of ping pong balls in a small room, like hitting off the walls. But I know that you feel like I belong here, right? You think I belong here? Yeah. So even though I am just, my house is crazy right now, my hair was wet, same outfit, you think I belong here. So our first principle of Unitarian Universalism, we used to sing this song every Sunday. We should start that again. Our first one is the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We believe in that, which means that we believe everyone belongs, and everyone belongs here, and everyone deserves to feel safe in their belonging. So I reminded myself of that this morning, that I knew you thought I belong. So I thought that we could do a little bit of a little meditation about belonging. And I was thinking about things that belong, that I think really belong here. Like, we know that we believe the trees belong here, right? And the river. Does anyone ever go down and watch the river? No one ever thinks this doesn't belong here. It belongs here just like we do. So I thought we could get, do you want to stand up and get some wiggles out? Stand up. And last week, the grown-ups did stuff with us, and that was pretty fun. So if you want to, this is a time for all ages. So if you want to steady your feet on the ground, you want to steady your feet and think about who's ever visited the mountains. Yeah. And we all know the mountains belong right where they are, right? So feel your feet just down in the ground, solid like a mountain. And take a deep breath into your center. And think about how you belong here, no matter what your day is like, no matter if you're grouchy or tired, or maybe you didn't do very well on a math test, and you belong here just like that mountain belongs where it is. So feel those solid feet under you. And now let's think about a big tall tree. It belongs right where it is, and you can still feel your roots, and maybe your branches are growing. Maybe there's a little wind ruffling your leaves. And now how about that river? What would it feel like if your body was a river? Like a monster. How about the sun? What would it feel like to take a breath and feel like the sun? Maybe you can feel that warmth in your belly when you take a breath in. Wonderful. Let's take one more deep breath into our bellies and out. I love being here with you where we all belong. And I hope that you feel that belonging, all of you. And this morning, we're going to go downstairs. But just like last week, if my friends can meet me right outside the door, because downstairs it is also discombobulated. There's a lot of stuff from the rummage sale down there. So we're going to make our way through it together. And before we go, let's remember we are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with minds that think. We are people with hearts that love. We are people who work for justice and peace. All right. Let's meet me outside the door. Just right outside.
Good morning. Good morning to you, to those folks that may be with us online. It is a joy to be with you today. Before I go and share with you the words from Dane and Perry, I wanted to say a couple of little things about the interim ministry and to introduce some people to you who are going to be working very closely with me and with you as a congregation in that way. As your new interim minister, I will be serving with you, as was mentioned, 3/4 time, and I'll be commuting weekly and maybe more than once a week from Peoria, Illinois. It's about an hour and a half, roughly, and thank goodness it's interstate. I'll be working, and I have already been working very closely with your staff and with your lay leadership. I'll be leading Sunday services roughly 2 times a month. But when there's a 5th Sunday, I'll be here 3 times, and I'll be with you Christmas Eve as well. And this will be through June. I am contracted to be with you for the first year of a 2-year interim ministry process. It is expected at this time, and again, it's at this time, that the interim search team, after a well-deserved rest, we'll be working to secure a full-time on-site interim minister to be with you for the 2nd year of the transition process. That will serve you best. It doesn't preclude that if something goes awry that I couldn't be here maybe a 2nd year, but the expectation is we'll be looking for somebody to bring with you who can be here even more intensively than I can. All of this interim transition is to help you as a congregation to address emotional and institutional issues in the congregation and as a congregation to be better prepared for your next settled minister. One of the analogies I use is this is like doing therapy after you've had a long-term relationship and you kind of step back and do assessment about your life to say, well, what can I do to make the next one go even better? To help support and further the interim transition process, a transition team has been recruited and volunteered enthusiastically to work with me and with your leadership. And I'd like to, as I call their names, if you are present in the room, I invite you to stand up so you can be recognized and stay standing. Barb Thompson, Anne Marie, and I want to make sure I pronounce your name right, Anne. Marie, it's Tadeki? Toady. All right. See? Ashley Myers, Doug McCullum, Hannah Harrington, and Christy and Amy Key are serving together, sharing one position. Thank you. You can have a seat. Thank you. These transition team members will serve as a major point of communication regarding the interim process, being available to speak to you, to listen to you, to serve as a sounding board for me and for the congregation leadership, with the staff and others, as well as supporting events that are part of this larger process. The first of these events is already scheduled. It's called the Ministerial Startup Process, to help launch the interim with an all-congregation event on Friday, September 23rd, and a leadership event on Saturday, the 24th. This will be led by a UUA congregational life staff member who is assigned to our congregation, the Reverend Sharon Dittmer, who will be flying in from Cincinnati. Please stay tuned for further information. I look forward to getting to know you better as we minister together over the next year. And thank you. So the housekeeping out of the way. Now, Danon Perry, who I'm going to be reading his words for our first reflection today. Danon Perry was an international conflict mediator. He worked during the Troubles in Ireland. He worked with the PLO and the Israelis. He started out as a nuclear physicist, ended up as a therapist, and decided to go into international conflict mediation. He wrote a wonderful book called The Warriors of the Heart that I highly recommend to you. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but this essay of his is one of my favorites. It's called The Parable of the Trapeze, Turning the Fear of Transformation into the Transformation of Fear. He says, "Sometimes I feel that my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging on to the trapeze bar, swinging along, or for a few moments in my life, I'm hurtling across space in between trapeze bars. Most of the time, I spend my life hanging on for dear life to my trapeze bar of the moment. It carries me along at a certain steady rate of swing, and I have a feeling that I'm in control of my life. I know most of the right questions and even some of the answers. But every once in a while, as I'm merrily, or maybe even not so merrily, swinging along, I look out ahead of me into the distance, and what do I see? I see another trapeze bar swinging towards me. It's empty. And I know in that place, in me that knows, that this new trapeze bar has my name on it. It is my next step, my growth, my aliveness coming to get me. In my heart of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I must release my grip on this present well-known bar and move to the next one. Each time it happens to me, I hope, no, I pray, that I won't have to let go of my old bar completely before I grab the new one. But in my knowing place, I know that I must totally release my grasp on my old bar, and for some moment in time, I must hurtle across space before I can grab on to the new bar. Each time, I am filled with terror. It doesn't matter that in all of my previous hurdles across the void of unknowing, I have always made it. I am each time afraid that I will miss, that I will be crushed on unseen rocks in the bottomless chasm between bars. I do it anyway. Perhaps this is the essence of what mystics call the faith experience. No guarantees, no net, no insurance policy. But you do it anyway because somehow to keep hanging on to that old bar is no longer on the list of alternatives. So for an eternity that can last a microsecond or 1,000 lifetimes, I soar across the dark void of the past is gone, the future is not yet here. It's called transition. I have come to believe that this transition is the only place that real change occurs. I mean real change, not the pseudo change that only lasts until the next time my old buttons get punched. I have noticed in our culture that this transition zone is looked upon as a no thing, a no place between. Sure, the old trapeze bar was real, and that new one coming towards me, I hope that's real too. But the void in between, is that just a scary, confusing, disorienting nowhere that must be gotten through as fast and as unconsciously as possible? No. No. What a wasted opportunity that would be. I have a sneaking suspicion that the transition zone is the only real thing, and the bars are illusions we dream up to avoid the void where the real change, the real growth occurs for us. Whether or not my hunch is true, it remains that the transition zones in our lives are incredibly rich places. They should be honored, even savored. Yes, with all the pain and fear and feelings of being out of control that can, but not necessarily, accompany transitions. They are still the most alive, most growth-filled, passionate, expansive moments in our lives. We cannot discover new oceans unless we have the courage to lose the sight of the shore. So transformation of fear may have nothing to do with making fear go away, but rather with giving ourselves permission to hang out in the transition between trapezes, transforming our need to grab that new bar, any bar, is allowing ourselves to dwell in the only place where change really happens. It can be terrifying. It can also be enlightening in the true sense of the word. Hurtling through the void, we just may learn how to fly. So ends our reading.
And so we transition into another part. Each week, we invite you to experience the spiritual practice of generosity. Our weekly offering is a display of our commitment to this free congregation and our local community. We share 50% of all non-pledge offerings from this collection with a local nonprofit organization. This month's recipient is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, the UUSC. It advances human rights and social justice around the world, partnering with those who confront injustice and oppressive policies. Their work is grounded in the belief that all people have an inherent power and dignity, so please be as generous as you can. Once the basket is passed, if you feel so moved, we invite you to come forward and light a candle to mark a joy or sorrow in your personal life. Now let this sacred time begin.
Good morning. I'm Barbara Thompson, a member of the Pastoral Care team. As we gather today, we are aware of hidden joys and sorrows in all our hearts. In this time of sharing, we take a moment to read from the Book of Joys and Sorrows, those personal life events you have chosen to share with us. We have joys this morning. Huge joy, the renamed Second Time Around sale, exceeded past rummage sale fundraising, many hours, many giving congregants, many thanks to all. And we have an interim minister from Christy Key. Welcome to Patrick. So glad. And also so glad to have my mother-in-law visiting, Tracy Tufty. It was such a joy for my whole family to work with our friends at the sale this weekend. Love you all. Let us become aware of the energy that brings us together in beloved community. As we share a time of silent meditation, may we open our hearts and minds to a place of quiet, to a silent prayer for the healing of pain and the balm of love. For what has been shared and for what remains in the quiet sanctuary of our hearts, we are grateful. We close our meditation with an Apache blessing. May the sun bring you new energy by day. May the moon softly restore you by night. May the rain wash away your worries. May the breeze blow new strength into your being. May you walk gently through the world and know its beauty all the days of your life.
While they're setting up, just one quick note, because I know you all love to join in and be encouraging. Please do not clap during the song. We were driving in the country woods and we didn't know why we were there. Maybe we were running from the big city, or maybe we were running to the mountain air. Then we came upon a cabin in a diner, and oh, how they did stare. Said, hey, what's the quickest way to Motel 6 out in these sticks? Said, hey, I'm feeling kind of weary, we've been driving all day and we need a place to stay. Ooh, and they said, baby, there ain't no shortcuts on your way. Oh, baby, there ain't no highways in these parts. You know, baby, gonna have to drive yourself down every little windy road if you really wanna get to where you're going. Hey, yeah. I was sitting on a therapist's couch and I didn't know why I was there. Maybe I was running from the big issues, or maybe I was running to a listening ear. Then I came upon a maze of emotion, and oh, how I did fear. Said, hey, what's the quickest way out of this mess to the happiness? Said, hey, I'm feeling kind of weary, I've been crying all day, and I need a little break. Ooh, and they said, baby, there ain't no shortcuts on your way. Oh, baby, there ain't no highways in these parts. You know, baby, gonna have to drive yourself down every little windy road if you really wanna get to where you're going. Yeah. I was sitting in a meditation hall and I didn't know why I was there. Maybe I was running from the noise outside, or maybe I was running to the stillness there. Then I came upon greed, hatred, and delusion, and oh, how I did fear. Said, hey, What's the quickest way to freedom and love? How do I rise above? I said, hey, I'm feeling kinda weary. I've been sitting all day with my mind in disarray. Ooh, and they said, baby, there ain't no shortcuts on your way. Oh, baby, there ain't no highways in these parts. You know, baby, gonna have to drive yourself down every little windy road if you really wanna get to where you're going. Yeah, really wanna get to where you're going. If you really wanna get to where you're going. If you really want to get to where you're going, if you really want to get to where you're going, hey.
Well, amen. Let's go home. No, I'm just kidding. Again, it's good to be with you. And let me just preface not just these remarks, but the ministry is you're going to be tired of hearing about transitions. You're going to be tired about interims. And that's the point. By the end of this process, with me and whoever else you're working with, you're going to say, thank you, go away. We're ready to start on the next thing. And if you're doing that, that's a good sign. But in the meantime, we're going to be talking about a lot of things where you're going to say, I'm not sure I want to engage in this. But we encourage you to stay engaged because that's how we do the work. Many years ago, in the late 1980s, some of you remember those years, after I graduated from college with an ever so marketable political science degree from the University of Missouri, good school, my sense of who I was and the realities that I thought defined who I was began to chip and peel away like old house paint. The economy was in shambles, and I could only find work doing a range of things from waiting tables to being a home health aide. And my first marriage went to pieces. I was a mess. To say I was depressed was like calling the Grand Canyon a hole in the ground. And then my life started to get really weird. At times there almost didn't seem to be any difference between reality and fantasy, between sleeping and waking, and the vivid, powerful dreams that I often had would stay with my thoughts for days. My reality became full of coincidences and synchronicities. I often walked into bookstores, picked up books that I had never heard of before, and opened them to random passages which said exactly what I needed to hear in my life right then and there. Or street people in the town I was living in would single me out of a crowd and approach me and say things that made absolutely perfect sense to me, but nobody else. It seemed as though they had read my mind or been sent to tell me things I needed to hear. Okay. I became estranged from many of the, quote, normal people I knew. I often could only talk about the most basic sorts of things in any kind of linear fashion. Everything came out in a jumble of images and metaphors that could only be understood by the artists and retired hippies and new agers that I was hanging out with. My world was turned upside down and inside out, and I was in chaos. Before something new begins, something else ends. Endings are the beginnings of transitions. During the summer of my clinical pastoral education training, I had the opportunity and privilege to be a student chaplain at the University of Missouri Hospital in Hyde Park on the south side of Chicago. I was allowed to share many emotionally intimate experiences, including death, with virtual strangers. After sitting with families and watching their father or their daughter die, I was struck by the observation that no one, not even the doctors, knew the exact moment of death. The best they could do was estimate based on when they could first determine when the patient was no longer alive. And this strikes me in this context because I'm reminded of how many times other endings occur in our lives and we don't even know it until we're past that transition point. We look back and go, oh, that just ended. Quite frankly, endings scare the crud out of most of us. We tend to tie up our sense of self with our relationships to the world. And when there is the possibility those relationships might change in some fundamental way, we psychologically have a tendency to be afraid. We internally equate the little deaths of all of these endings to the perceived finality of our existentially physical deaths. The many anxieties attached to death with a capital D then come into play even without our being aware of them. Sometimes we're afraid to give up even painful situations for fear of the unknown. In this, I'm reminded of an old friend who just couldn't stop his pattern of seriously dysfunctional relationships. When I asked him about this, he referred to this as having a bad case of the warm, prickly pear fuzzies. He said, once you hug enough cactuses, you start to miss the familiarity of the pain. He says you're afraid there won't be anything if you give up the pain. The emotional consequences of these endings in our lives can be profound. Even with what seem like minor changes or endings, and even if they're generally positive, taking a new job somewhere or making a major, positive change, there's often sadness and a sense of loss. At some level, we have a need to grieve for these parts of our lives that are now past. We have to say, for good or ill, this is now gone. Given all of this, it's no wonder that religions and cultures around the world have specific rites and behaviors to help people through some of these changes. Collectively, we recognize our endings with goodbye parties and funerals and memorial services. We celebrate our new beginnings with child dedications, in-gathering services, new member Sundays, with rites of passage such as bridging ceremonies for our children and youth, and in elder recognition services. We honor crucial changes in our lives. Rituals and rites of passage help us all give shape and meaning to these. They offer a frame of reference to chaos which we enter when we have change. Often they give us identity, either in hope of who we may be or in recognition of who we have become through our struggles. As a congregation, you are in the midst of a major transition. Did you know that? You did. Good. This is a good, healthy start. Because there are some folks who don't. You formally ended an 11-year ministry with a previous minister, Jay Wolin. Last Sunday was officially the last day he was your minister, the 31st. Although most of the leave taking all happened weeks and even months ago. There are probably, in fact, more than probably, there are very likely a range of emotions present around this ending, including not a little bit of grief with all of the emotions that come with grief, and even guilt about feeling good about some of these things sometimes. Most of our emotions will not go away quickly, nor perhaps should they. My being here before you for the first time as your interim minister is another indicator of this transition to a time that is not what it was and not yet what it will be. It is another sign of transition. In mythology and religious narratives, this chaos is often seen in the nether realm entered into by heroes and heroines. It is the monster that swallows them. It is the belly of Jonah's great fish. It is the Minotaur's labyrinth. It is here that myths and stories and rituals of passage can help us by speaking to our subconscious, providing us with vehicles by which we can make our journeys and maps to guide us. In the midst of change and chaos, we may need to mount ships of myth and ritual and dream, scanning the horizon with the eyes of a seeker. Behold, now cometh the changer. Fear not in chaos's wake, for she comes to stir us from our lethargy and to blow bright the embers of our souls. The chaos, the in-between place, which psychologist Erik Erikson calls the neutral zone. And let me just say, I always think of Romulans when I think of the neutral zone, for you Star Trek fans. So, this in-between place, this state in which people often feel the truth of the bumper sticker, which reads, "My karma ran over my dogma." And we cannot rush this part of the process. It is often an experience of listlessness, or maybe an experience of just sitting still, or simply being for a while to allow important internal processes to take place. It is a time that is not an ending, and it is not a beginning. I tend to think of this as sort of like the flyover country of our experiences that we tend to dismiss out of hand as the thing that's in the way of us getting from one place to another, and yet that's where the majority of reality exists. Old patterns fall away, and we find ourselves trying on new ways of being in the world. And this is one of the advantages of transitions, is we get to play with different things. It's sort of like going into adolescence again, but not with the hormones. Often the mystic becomes almost commonplace. Dreams become vivid and memorable, and often there's this sense of anticipation and waiting. I intensely experienced this waiting those many years ago after things in my life had gone to the proverbial hell in a handbasket. At that time, I told a mentor and a friend of mine that I was anxious and seemingly adrift and this feeling of waiting for something to happen. And in reply, he very wisely suggested I pay attention to my dreams and the things, and that I should maybe spend my time just go learning new things about the world, and that I perhaps even just try and enjoy the change of the pace which the waiting was giving me, and to do something for myself in the interim. As I did these things, and I relaxed and stopped pushing the river, the events seemed to accelerate, and the chaos began to fade, and the waiting eventually ended. The Catholic mystic Meister Eckhart calls this chaos the via negativa, offering that often the only way out of hell is through it. It is the nether world, the land of fairy, which the mythic heroes and shamans enter and leave transformed by their encounters. It is a matter of this transformation, which is crucial to understanding this chaos. Noted anthropologist Mircea Eliade wrote that for the archaic and traditional cultures, the symbolic return to chaos is indispensable to any new creation. In the midst of chaos, many people experience a sense of seeing things as they really are for the first time. This idea that the scales have fallen from their eyes. The veil of old perceptions is lifted. This neutral zone experience provides access to an angle of vision on life that one can get nowhere else. And it is a succession of these experiences and their unique perspectives and views over a lifetime that produce wisdom. This chaos is an opportunity for renewal and recreation. Many years ago, when I was just starting out my ministry studies, I was casting about for information to help me deal with the issues of change and transformation and transition in my life, and those of the congregation I was working with. In a period of 2 days, 3 different people recommended the same book on this topic. Now, I feel that the first time something happens is probably an accident. The second time is a coincidence, and the third time somebody's telling you something. So I took the hint, and I went out and got the book. And the book is Transitions Making Sense of Life's Changes, and it's now considered something of a classic. It's been out a long time. By now, the late William Bridges, who was a president of the American Humanistic Psychology Society, he says in his book, he talks about these issues of endings and beginnings and the chaos that comes in between. What I found in this book seemed uncanny. The patterns and effects of life transitions that Bridges described had strong correlations with my own experiences, both personally and with organizations. William Bridges felt that these transitions are a part of our natural process of renewal, and that by understanding these processes, these elements of the transitions in our lives, we will not just be able to cope with them, but we will be better able to be empowered to work with them. We will have a greater ability to impact these changes and their consequences. In this, he holds out for us that there will usually be a new beginning after the endings and the chaos. Or as a friend of mine says, yes, there is another shore that we will end up on. The chaos itself is a place of disintegration, and by our being more aware of this pattern, we have the possibility of greater control or impact, or at least understanding, of the reintegration which will take place. And this actually holds out great hope for us as individuals and as a congregation and as a society. With death or ending comes the possibilities of renewal or recreation. As author Riane Eisler has observed about the shift from one paradigm or worldview to another, she says the death throes could be the birth pangs and the opening of a door to a new future. From one of his other essays, Getting Them Through the Wilderness, a leader's guide to transition, Bridges wrote that leaders often, quote, confused transition with change. I'm trying not to hit the plosives. I'm sorry about that, Steve. Assuming that transition just meant gradual or extended or unfinished change. So transition is not the same as change. He goes on to say, transition is very different from change. Change is situational. For example, the reduction in workforce or the switch in reporting relationships are all changes in a company. Transitions, on the other hand, is a three-phase psychological reorientation process that people go through when they are coming to terms with change. It begins with an ending, with people letting go of their old reality and their identity. And unless people can make a real ending, they will be unable to make a successful beginning. After the ending, he says, people go into the second phase of the transition, the neutral zone. He says, this is a no man's land where people are, and he quotes Matthew Arnold's graphic image, wandering between two worlds, one dead, the other powerless to be born. Bridges offers that the neutral zone is a time and a state of being in which the old behaviors and attitudes die out and people go dormant for a while as they prepare to move out into a new direction. He says it is a dangerous time for organizations. But it is also, and when innovations and experiments have an especially good chance of succeeding. Only after going through each of these first two phases, letting go and into the chaos, into these phases of transition, can people deal successfully then with the third phase of beginning over, with new energy and a new sense of purpose, a new outlook, and a new image of themselves. Unquote. So this middle place, this neutral zone, this chaos, is not something to be rushed through. As Danon Perry advised earlier in the parable of the trapeze, he says, giving ourselves permission to hang out in the transition between trapezes, transforming our need to grab that new bar, any bar, is allowing ourselves to dwell in the only place where change really happens. It can be terrifying. It can also be enlightening in the true sense of the word. Hurtling through the void, we just may learn to fly. End quote. So as a congregation, you have opportunities during this interim ministry period prior to calling a new settled minister to work on aspects of your community's life that might not be available during these less plastic and mutable periods. The more intentional these opportunities are engaged with, the more likely the desired results may be achieved. Transitions are a part of living with all of their grief and their goodness. And to be fully human, we have to respect and embrace transitions with all of the risks for doing harm, along with all of the powers and potentials for creating the beloved community. Like death, beginnings often do not have clear boundaries or starting points. We may not recognize them until we're well underway and we've already been celebrating them. We may only understand them in retrospect. But beginnings are a process, and it's a process, not a point, of reintegration. Not everything disappears with endings. Now, a lot of things can fall away and probably should fall away. And a lot of new or modified things come into our spheres during our odysseys and change. And again, it's a time of experimentation, of changing, trying on new things. No harm, no foul kind of thing. We interweave then, as we begin this process of reintegration, we interweave the new and improved with the old and reliable, creating new patterns. We aren't starting new lives. Rather, we're starting the newest chapters of our lives. Our lives may even seem a little bit tame compared to the roller coaster we've just been riding. But as the Zen master said, after enlightenment comes the laundry. Hopefully, all the unsettling and strange things we have experienced have helped us to become a little more of the people we can and we want to be. With awareness, integrity of the process, and effort, this congregation's current transitions will result in a religious community in the world that is a little bit more of the health and good that it can be. And perhaps thereby help create a world that is more of the beloved community that it can be. Endings and beginnings with emptiness and germination in between. That is the shape of the transitions of our lives. These times occur far more frequently in our lives and cut far more deeply into them than most of us imagine. And these same processes are ongoing constantly in our personal lives and in institutions. As humankind has known and celebrated for millennia, these same rhythms put us to sleep at night and wake us up in the morning after a time of dark, half full, half remembered, and enigmatic clues. They take us through the year, around to an ending that opens out onto new beginnings. Endings and beginnings with stirrings and germination in between. This basic pattern is essential to our lives as individuals and communities. And we will learn to recognize it and work with it if we wish to nurture the growth and deepening we envision and desire both in our personal lives and in our congregation's lives, in our faith and in our world, all the while being and becoming the ever-changing, living embodiment of the beloved community that we are and that we can be. Amen. Please join us now in our closing hymn, 347, Gather the Spirit, both in the gray hymnal and on the screen, and rise as you're willing and able in body or spirit.
summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Please join us in unison in extinguishing our chalice together. We say, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self. To place our ideals, our dreams before the crowd is to risk loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. To live is to risk dying. May the deep peace of the running waves be to you, and the deep peace of the flowing air to you. The deep peace of the quiet earth to you, and the deep peace of the shining stars to you, and the deep peace of the infinite peace to you and to all people in all ways and places and times. Amen, and blessed be. Please be seated.